What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It is Thursday, September 22nd, 2016. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. And before we go any further, I want to celebrate a little joyous occasion within our family. Our grandniece just popped out a brand new son just 2 hours ago, and we're all looking at the photos coming in, going ooh and ah and all this other stuff. So it sort of rededicates me to the idea of leaving this next generation a better world than the one we are currently living in, which I think ought to be our top moral priority for every generation, is to leave the next generation a better world than was left to us. Sadly, our generation has kind of failed miserably on that one. Okay, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Now, a reporter in a Hillary affair, wasn't really a press conference, basically got up and publicly challenged Hillary Clinton to take a neurocognitive test and release the results to the public. And Hillary Clinton said, well, there's no need for that. And basically from this point on, it looks like Hillary will not be releasing any more medical information. And we'll just see where that's going to go. But again, it reinforces the untrustworthiness issue, that she's got something that she is hiding and covering up. Now, over at the Congress, things are getting very tense. As you know, FBI Director Comey has been given a subpoena 2 days ago to produce all unredacted Clinton investigation documents. And it shouldn't be an issue. They've finished the report. Everything's already in the file boxes. It's not like they have to go through and sort any of it. And specifically, Congress asked for all unredacted copies of the interview notes with employees of Platte River Networks. What Comey turned over had redactions, specifically Combetta, who is now in the crosshairs because of posts that he made to Reddit, then tried to delete, seeking advice on how to erase VIP emails from an email archive, which shows intent. Now, the House Oversight Committee has ordered Reddit to go back into their archives, their backups, and preserve all these deleted posts written by Combetta. And apparently, according to Chairman Jason Chaffetz, Reddit is now fully cooperating. Latest update, Reddit has been found in Fort Marcy Park, declared a suicide with 3 self-inflicted gunshots to the back of the head. So we'll see what's going to happen with that. Now, a federal judge has just ruled that the State Department must turn over hundreds of hidden documents before next Monday, which detail Hillary Clinton's security training during her time as Secretary of State. Now, at issue here is that Hillary testified to the FBI interview. Well, she wasn't even testifying. She wasn't under oath. Hillary told the FBI that she couldn't recall taking any classes about the proper care of classified documents. That was her version of the I didn't know any better excuse. And it was bogus from the start, because anybody who has been exposed to classified information knows you do not get your clearance and access to the documents until you complete the course. It's mandatory. It's not option. Now, if these documents, the federal judge has just demanded, confirm that Hillary Clinton and her aides did take those courses, then it means that Hillary was either lying to the FBI or her memory is totally shot, either of which means she's not qualified to be president. Now, as you know, Brian Pagliano, who has an immunity deal, was subpoenaed before the Congress. Now, when you have an immunity deal, you're not allowed to take the Fifth Amendment anymore. And Brian Pagliano simply didn't show up when he was subpoenaed. And now the House panel has voted to hold Brian Pagliano in contempt of Congress for simply refusing to show up and testify when he was supposed to. My question right now, has anybody seen Brian Pagliano alive recently? Because he seems to have vanished from the face of the earth. Maybe they're going to wind up chasing him down the San Diego freeway in a van like they did with O.J. or something. Now, over at CNN, there is clearly division in the ranks over the handling of the Hillary and Trump campaigns. CNN's official editorial policy is get Trump at all costs. And Kellyanne is basically calling Aaron on all the lies. And it's a street brawl. And the real victim of all of this is, of course, the credibility of CNN. And right now, the numbers continue to show that public trust in the corporate media is at an all-time low. They're losing audience. They're losing ad revenues. They're committing suicide right on national television. All right, according to White House Watch, Trump is now at 44%, Clinton 39%, Johnson 8%, Stein 2%. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and is usually the case in the first hour. We're talking about the ongoing political campaigns. Fox News is reporting that Trump is widening his lead over Hillary Clinton, and yet the Hillary Clinton campaign insists they've got polls showing that she is leading Donald Trump by 5% all across the country. And we know the corporate media that favor Hillary have been rigging their own polls. They call it adjusting the methodology. And one of the things that they've been caught doing is oversampling Democrats 2-1 over Republicans, which isn't accurate. They're oversampling women, blacks, Hispanics. They're trying to generate numbers that make it look like Hillary is close to Donald Trump so she can steal the election. But more and more people are starting to call the corporate media on the very obvious fraud. Zero Hedge has an article, one of these polls is not like the other, basically showing how NBC is rigging their polls, which makes us all deplorable to point out that the corporate media is lying to us all. Remember earlier in the week we had this story about how Monmouth had raw data from their pollsters showing Donald Trump well in the lead, but after statistical adjustment and weighing and various other manipulations, came out and declared that Hillary was winning. They're just making this stuff up. There's no big skill to running a poll. Go on out, ask a cross-section of America who you're voting for, and that's what you report. But between targeted interviews, targeted polling, and statistical manipulation, they're creating this illusion that Hillary Clinton still has a lot of support. As of the last poll we ran at WhatReallyHappened.com, Donald Trump was at 98%, Hillary 2%, I assume from the people that, are being paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign to monitor all the bad things I say about her on my website and on my radio show. Hillary came out with this rant earlier, and she's changing her approach. She was literally out there on the verge of shouting. People are already making fun of it. There's a video we put up at WhatReallyHappened.com. Somebody sent me this graphic saying that Hillary has gone full Baylock, and it's time for some Tranya, and you have to be my age to get the reference to the original Star Trek. And she ends by saying, "Why aren't I 50 points ahead?" And she's out there shouting in a voice so loud even the birds are saying, "Who the heck is that?" And Donald Trump fired back the absolute perfect answer. Why aren't you 50 points ahead? Because you're terrible. And that's really what it comes down to. We're going to take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I hate to jump to the Syria theater.
Actually, that's next on the talking points.
Do you have any reports of a Caliber cruise missile strike by Russia on a structure in Aleppo, killing intelligence officers from like U.S. and Israel and a couple other Gulf states?
Yes, and the corporate media isn't reporting on that because, the American people aren't supposed to know that Israel and the U.S. and Great Britain and all these things are actually there directing the ISIS battle for Aleppo. Israeli media is actually saying this is an act of war by Russia against Israel. And no, it isn't, because Israel doesn't have any business being in Syria.
But they got them, Mike. They got a lot of intelligence officers, including, ISIS and a lot of the terrorist intelligence people in that structure. I don't know how big the building was, but all three cruise missiles hit the structure.
It was a decapitation strike, and yes, basically they took out ISIS command structure. and that means for at least the next 2 to 3 days, ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Aleppo are operating without a chain of command, and this would be the time for Russia and Syria to move on in and mop the place up.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And Justin's timing was perfect because we're getting on to the war zones. People are talking about Russia's counter blow. And apparently the planners in Washington, D.C. Thought that they could get away with blaming Russia and Syria for the humanitarian aid convoy destruction, and they would just back off and say, oh, we don't want to touch this. And instead, Russia and Syria went on the offensive, coming out with information indicating the U.S. story just doesn't make any sense. They've released photos of the remains of that aid convoy. There are no shell holes. There are no craters. Somebody set it on fire on the ground in order to create this distraction from the U.S. attack on the Syrian forces. So the U.S. can say, well, forget about that was a mistake when we bombed the Syrian forces, but here, that aid convoy, how could you do this? And Russia and Syria are just not sitting still for this. And the evidence continues to build that this was, by the U.S. and its allies, again, to frame Russia, just like they were gassing the Syrian people and trying to frame Assad. It's become an all-too-common repeating pattern. And Russia just upped the ante by demanding a formal United Nations investigation into the attack on the humanitarian aid convoy. And because it was a UN convoy, I'm sure the UN is going to go on in there and take a close look at what's going on. Remember when the U.S. thought they could get the UN chemical weapons inspectors to support the claim that Assad was gassing his own people? And they went on in there, and there was this amazingly well-timed, convenient sarin gas attack right in front of the UN chemical weapons inspectors on the very day they arrived. And ultimately, the United Nations said, no, this wasn't Assad. This was the rebels. They did it to frame Assad for it. And that's another common feature of all the war propaganda throughout the years, that the leader of this country is a threat to his own civilians. I mean, our country is a threat to our civilians. But in the case of Syria, Iraq, Libya, this threat that the government was going to harm civilians was greatly exaggerated to convince us that we had a moral duty to go on in and save those poor people from that evil public central bank that Muammar Gaddafi set up. So this thing is continuing to unwind. And again, Syria and Russia are saying, we had nothing to do with that humanitarian aid convoy. And you have to look at the motive, or the absence of one. Remember what I said. To find out if you're being lied to, look for what should be there and isn't. Neither Syria nor Russia had any reason to hit the humanitarian aid convoy. They want supplies to get into the people of Aleppo. Because without those supplies, the people of Aleppo have to do what ISIS and Al-Qaeda tell them to do just to eat the next meal. Now, obviously, since Washington, D.C. is supporting ISIS and Al-Qaeda, they don't want the humanitarian aid to get through. And they needed that distraction from their attack on Syrian forces to try and flip the propaganda around and make Russia and Syria the bad guys. Story coming out of 21st Century Wire, U.S. NATO rebel coalition appear to have fabricated UN convoy evidence. I think this was a rush job. The U.S. realized it had stepped in a big pile of Al-Qaeda with the attack on the Syrian forces, and they needed something as a distraction. They just said, hit the aid convoy. And it was a rush job, and it was reckless and careless and poorly planned, and everybody sees what's going on here. Now, one of the issues that is surfacing is who within U.S. command structure actually gave the order to bomb the Syrian forces. And what it has revealed is there is a schism opening up between the administration, specifically the State Department, and the Pentagon. The Pentagon wants war. The more war there is, the more money they get, the more they get to loot the American people. They get to buy weapons and pin medals and things on themselves and look really, really important. And so there is word that is circulating around that the Pentagon went in and attacked the Syrian army without authorization of the chain of command, specifically the National Command Authority, meaning the president. And so we're seeing this schism open up where the U.S. government is beginning to factionalize and fracture badly. Now, Bashar al-Assad is countering the U.S. claims that this was an accident when the U.S. bombed the Syrian troops, pointing out that this attack lasted for an entire hour. Doesn't seem like a mistake when it goes on that long. And remember, Russia tried to call the coordination center to say, hey, you're attacking Syrian forces, not ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And the appropriate U.S. official was unavailable, was away from the phone. And now we realize he was away from the phone for an hour. That sounds like it's intentional as well. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. Keith in Montana, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hope you're having a good one over there, and you and Claire. Hey, I wanted to thank you for posting that UN human rights video. I don't know if you got to watch the entire thing or not.
I watched most of it, not all of it.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. When I was watching that, all I could think of was that Naomi Klein and her shock doctrine that's on YouTube there, outlining how the U.S. wars are. And this is the same premise. It's the denial of services, power, water, sewer, food. The same premise used in World War II and the Allied terror bombings to get a civilian population to capitulate. Same thing used in Chile, same thing used in the shock and awe in Iraq.
And you know what's amazing? It never works. I mean, when the Nazis tried to do that terror campaign against Great Britain with the V-1 buzz bomb and the V-2 ballistic missile, it hardened British resolve against the enemy. And why they continue to think that this is going to work, it just boggles the mind, because it hasn't worked.
Did you catch the part on the schooling and health care?
Refresh my memory.
Well, they were talking about interviewing all the different Syrians, and a majority of those, I thought one thing I thought was interesting when they tried to attach the number of Syrians as to which portion is Muslim and stuff like that. The Muslim clerics said 20.
Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you just cut out there for a second.
Figures it's our infrastructure.
Yes.
Anyway, when they asked the Muslim cleric there about how many Muslims there were, he said 23 million. And when they asked the Orthodox Christians there how many there was there, and they said 23 million, it showed the diverse culture of how everyone was so interlinked over there. But the interesting thing is when they asked different people there what was their biggest gripe of the Assad government, one of the kids says that he had to pay $50 tuition like that for his entire schooling. And then that human rights gal went on to say, it is just like Libya. They had free health care, free medical, everything like that. And this is the corporatization of another country, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Everything privatized, the people pay for everything, and the government's on the side of the corporations. That's fascism. That is fascism right there.
That's exactly what Naomi Klein had brought out in her video on the shock doctrine. And if anyone hasn't seen that after your show, they should probably go watch that, because it is a documented history of all the wars, how they led up, how Bechtel and all these big, huge corporations went in there to privatize the entire country, to soak those people into massive debt and, of course, at interest.
Oh, and acquire the major assets. I mean, following that whole situation in Kosovo, General Wesley Clark wound up owning a huge chunk of the coal rights in the newly created Kosovo that had been carved off of Bosnia, I think it was. That's what it's all about, conquering a country, divvying up the assets, and everybody gets rich while ordinary people are dying. Okay?
Yeah, one of my veteran friends that served 3 tours in Iraq over there outside of, what's that biggest area?
Okay, Keith, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Stay on the line. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to continue with Keith in Montana. Keith, what you wanted to share one more story about a friend of yours who was a veteran.
Yeah, he served 3 tours over there, and his main area of tour was Fallujah. And we know what happened over there.
Yes.
But he said his main premise of his being over there was to guard oil lines. And then I asked him, well, what else you do? And he said, other than kill a bunch of innocent civilians, he says his other job was to distribute the U.S. West propaganda into the school system there to westernize the Iraqis. And in thinking of that, I kept thinking of the same thing happened with Germany and the denazification of Germany.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course, this was to take the pride, the culture, all the heritage away from the people, just as they're doing here, just as they're doing in other nations like that, you know, to build this one world government, you know.
Yeah.
I just I'd share that with you.
Yeah, no, was done to the Native American population, was done to the indigenous Hawaiians, the indigenous Tahitians. The policy is always, we're going to conquer the world and make them just like us, which makes this new approach where we're going to pour a bunch of people into your country and you have to make your country look just like the one that they were running away from. It seems poorly conceived, and I think if it were not for the vast sums of money people like George Soros are pouring into this, it wouldn't have gone very far at all.
Yeah, can I add one more thing, Mike?
Yeah, real quick.
Yeah, demographically speaking, if you look up any country, and I'll use Russia and the United States as an example, Russia is 86% Christian. The United States is 71% Christian.
Mm-hmm.
The lifestyles of the Russians are no more different than those over here. And even you can get a laugh out of watching YouTube videos of like Russian car crashes and stuff like that. They even speak like Americans. You know,
yes.
But what do you do to get people, namely so-called Christians, to go to war with one another? It's propaganda. And of course, I always use a reference of who would Jesus bomb next, you know.
Yes.
But demographically, I don't care if it's the Middle East or like that. There's straight people, gay people, whatever like that. We're all the same. It's just governments have to keep us fighting to vindicate their warfare, you know.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, left to ourselves, people can get along just fine. Christian, Jewish, Muslim, gay, straight, black, white, pink, peach, taupe, mauve, plaid. People get along by themselves pretty much naturally. It is governments that fan up chaos and war in order to keep in control.
Yep, that's it. All right, my best to you and Claire, okay?
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Did we lose Steve?
If you click on email, what really happened, it doesn't pull up any email address to say anything to you, but just let you know that. But I did come by a picture yesterday of Hillary Clinton. It's a recent picture, and it's really interesting in that it shows a very puffy-faced Hillary, almost like what we call moon face, what we see with Cushing's disease from the use of steroids, corticosteroids pertain, and mainly prednisone. And I just wanted to throw that picture by you and let you look at it. So I did a little research on it. Normally, prednisone is not used with Parkinson's disease, but there is some research out there showing that it maybe should be, and that it does mask and minimize the Parkinson's syndrome's symptomology.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at the picture. My wife even looked at it, and she goes, she looks like she's been on steroids for a long time, that picture. The jawline, the cheekbone, very moon-faced, like steroids, like Cushing's disease. I said, yeah, it does, doesn't it? So just thought I'd throw that by you. Not that she has Cushing's, but if they're using high doses of prednisone, and actually prednisone will cause rages in behavior. I've seen that.
Yeah, I read that in the contraindications. And, you know, it may be that...
It may be from high prednisone use right now.
But, you know, people are trying to figure out why Hillary is all of a sudden literally yelling at her supporters on video, and maybe she's having a pharmacological reaction. Maybe they changed her medication and it's altered her personality.
Yeah, well, in a hospital setting, I've given high doses right off the bat, 60, 70 milligrams a day, and it can turn you literally nuts. It really can. We tell people about, you know, it can change your personality. It can push your tempers, and I'm starting to see now that video you showed, or at least RBN showed on their website, showed a very angry, hostile Hillary Clinton, and I started putting it together. I started to think maybe with the picture, maybe prednisone. Maybe they got her on some high doses of prednisone right now to kind of mask those Parkinson's disease symptoms.
Yeah, but it's creating new symptoms, and everybody's noticing. Steve, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the U.S. is still trying to act like they're in charge of the world. And the U.S. is now demanding a no-fly zone in Syria. Now, technically, we're not at war with Syria. Syria does not want the United States in there. They have not granted their permission for the United States to be carrying out military operations there. The Syrian Air Force and the Russian Air Force are close to erasing all of these U.S.-backed terrorist groups from Syria, and so the U.S. says, we want a no-fly zone to protect those humanitarian aid convoys, which the evidence is now showing wasn't struck from the air. And this may be in response to a comment that Russia made the other day that any aircraft threatening Syrian positions will be fired on, meaning the U.S., Great Britain, Australia, and Denmark. Putin is now out there vowing to protect Assad from U.S. dirty tricks. Talk about a Herculean task, given the history of the U.S. government and dirty tricks. It's all they seem to know how to do here. Now, there's a video we put up there on WhatReallyHappened.com. The truth regarding Syria. It is not and never has been a civil war. It is a U.S. invasion. All of these wars are U.S. invasions. They're trying to convince you that this is humanitarian, that we're saving the people from an evil dictator, that the tyrant is using sarin on his own. They've got nuclear weapons they're going to use on us. And after all of the lies, I mean, only a moron is going to believe anything the U.S. government or the corporate media says from this point on. Have you not been lied to enough to where you're ready to say, I'm not listening anymore to anything any politician or any talking head on the media has to say? There are a few exceptions, obviously, Cynthia McKinney, Dr. Ron Paul, and Glenn Greenwald. We want to listen to him. But by and large, the corporate media is in lockstep, goose step, with the U.S. war machine. So what's going on in Syria? Are they getting rid of Assad? Is it really all over that pipeline that Assad refused to allow to be built across Syria so that Israel could steal the Golan oil and sell it to Europe? Obviously a major issue. But apparently, back in a Defense Intelligence Agency document from 2012, and it was declassified May of last year, basically says a major part of the agenda is to balkanize Syria. And I have mentioned many times before that what the U.S. wants to do is create a new independent Kurdistan, carving pieces out of Syria, Turkey, and Iraq to do it. The goal is to take the larger countries, more powerful countries in the Middle East, and break them into little tiny pieces so they can be bullied and pushed around by the United States and by Israel. That's the real agenda here. Now, the British Parliament has just issued a report by the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee that has interviewed all the key British decision makers, and they've basically admitted the war in Libya was based on lies. That Gaddafi was a cruel tyrant, that he was a threat to his own civilian population. Remember Waco? We know which government is a danger to their own population. And basically saying that, yeah, this is what the U.S. does. They'll make up a bunch of lies and try and goad a war. Now, over in Yemen, the Saudi airstrikes, acting as a proxy, again, for the United States, have killed 20 civilians, including children this time. That's the reality of what's going on. This is not a humanitarian mission. It's not an intervention to save a people from a cruel tyrant. What's going on in all of these countries is they have come to understand that what happened to their country was not a genuine internal revolution, but a coup d'etat from outside to install puppet rulers, and they do not want their puppet rulers. They want self-representation. They want to run their own countries for the benefit of their own people. There's nothing wrong with that unless you happen to be a U.S. war hawk and a private central banker who believe that all human activity should serve the greed of the money junkies. Over in Israel, troops have been photographed beating an unarmed Palestinian during what they called a routine check. And they're trying to justify saying that the man was resisting his arrest. Well, you know something? If I'm being kicked and beaten, I tend to resist too. That's really not a very good justification. All right, let's take some phone calls here. Karen in Maryland, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi there. Okay. My question for you, whether or not we agree with this or have the same mindset about it, is about, do you know about, have you seen the new credit cards that have a chip embedded in them and have a special way to insert the chip credit cards in the credit card machines? Do you know what it is that I'm speaking of?
I've seen them around here. I mean, Claire and I are basically weaning ourselves away from credit cards, and partly that's because I think it was about 3 Christmases ago, Claire had one of her credit cards that had what was called the contactless chip, looted and emptied by somebody wandering around the mall with a backpack. So these days we pay cash or we do without, which we're working to get our credit card bills paid off completely. But the issue here is that all of these systems are there for the convenience of the bankers. And the reason for the plastic card is you can spend and spend and spend, and that physical card in your hand doesn't get any smaller. You don't have any kind of an intuitive feedback as to how much money you've spent or how much you have left. And that's just another way of goading you to borrow more money to support a banking system that is a Ponzi scheme. And it's very alarming to me that credit card companies will not allow you to have an old-fashioned magnetic stripe-only card. They've all got chips now. We had one of our credit card companies that sent us a notification. Our new cards will have the radio chips, and we wrote back and said, cancel our account.
Okay. Well, my question is, if you haven't already answered it, you know, what in your opinion is the ulterior motive for the chip? Because there's the overt motivation, which makes the consumers bite and be interested, and then there's the ulterior motive. So if you haven't already said it, what do you deem to be the ulterior motive for the chip embedded credit card?
Well, the theory is that the chip is harder to tamper with than a magnetic stripe, which is true. But inevitably, every time they come out with another whiz-bang system to get you to go on and use that plastic card, the cyber criminals find a way around it. Now, the reason they've gone to a card that you have to physically insert into the card reader is to get away from that problem of the contactless cards being looted and plundered by cyber criminals with backpacks and everything. But it's still the motive for the plastic is to get people to not use cash anymore, to have your money always in a bank. And we're hearing where they're already talking about banning all U.S. currency above the $10 denomination, because they've got to find some way to force you to keep your wealth in their banks as the negative interest rates start to increase. And what they're trying to create is a world in which you have no control whatever on your wealth. It's in a bank somewhere where they can play with it. They can dip into it if they get into trouble. And if you go back and you look at the history of currency in this entire country, when this country started, the wealth was literally in your hand because the money in the United States was silver and gold that you could have in your hand. The paper notes were just claim checks for convenience. But once that silver dollar was in your hand, you had control of it. There wasn't anything the bankers or the government could do to change its value or manipulate it. And then ever since the creation of the Federal Reserve, they've been trying to push us away from a commodity-based money to this virtual make-believe fairy dust money that they do manipulate. And the most obvious sign of that manipulation is that a dollar today is worth less than 5 cents at the time of the creation of the Federal Reserve. And ultimately they want to take away even the option for you to take your wealth out of their bank in some kind of portable, transportable means. And they claim it's to fight terrorism and drug dealing. But it's really all about locking your wealth in their banks so that they can play their games with it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike?
Doing good.
Mike, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think? Do you think Putin is going to draw his own line in the sand and say, if they're to put up a no-fly zone, that Russians are going to challenge it and they will open fire on American or NATO jets if that happens? Because, just going too far, and if they're doing this, and I personally think at some point there's going to be a mutiny among American troops, because it almost happened in 2012.
Well, it's kind of interesting because earlier in the week we put up this article about how the U.S. forces on the ground there have come to understand they're there to protect ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and that's not sitting very well. Now, Putin does not want war with the U.S., neither does China. They're trying to figure out a way to contain the U.S. aggressions without allowing it to turn into a hot war. The reality is that the U.S. can demand a no-fly zone over Syria, but if Syria says no, there really isn't much that the U.S. can do that doesn't amount to an outright invasion of Syria, saying, well, we're going to have a no-fly zone. Yeah, but at that point, the U.S. was openly invading and conquering Libya and going after Gaddafi. I think it would be very reckless and dangerous for the U.S. to do it, which doesn't mean they're not going to do it. But I think what Putin will probably do is go to the United Nations and challenge the legitimacy of a unilateral United States no-fly zone over somebody else's country, meaning Syria. And I don't think the United Nations, especially having just had their humanitarian aid convoy destroyed, is going to be very sympathetic to the U.S. point of view.
Yeah, but I think the U.S. might tell the UN where to go. Because this is we got a lawless government. That's why I'm saying, at the final analysis, do you think Putin will use force himself to stop this?
Well, I think the U.S. is going to be treading very lightly with the United Nations because Obama has dreams of being the General Secretary.
Yeah, but, I personally don't think that in a local war, who would say a local war, of course, that the U.S. military would have a chance against Russia today. Not the military the way it is today. It's demoralized, feminized. It's not.
The equipment is expensive, junk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think. Plus, they're demoralized, and like you said, these soldiers know that they're protecting. They're actually protecting the very people they're supposedly bombing, setting off bombs in the United States and Europe. So I just don't. I don't see us having a chance. The Russian military at the same time today is much. The only thing is, I don't know. I keep hearing that Russia's in very, very bad financial straits. You probably know better than me whether that's really true or not.
Well, they're in much better financial condition than either the European Union or the United States right now, and that's because Putin took direct governmental control of their private central bank. It's still privately owned, but Russia manages that private central bank for the benefit of the nation and its people. And by the way, it was when Putin took over control of Russia's private central bank that Russia went from being our trusted friend and ally to the top of the U.S. government's special high-interest targets list.
Yeah, it does seem like every time somebody gets on the wrong side of the central banks, things go south. But
bad things happen.
It's not Libya, and it's not, and it's not Iraq. And I just think I just don't know what I believe we're governed by madmen. And the question is the U.S. military at some point going to say, no, you're not going to misuse us like this? And even personally, I wish this had happened already a while ago. I wish the military would have marched into the White House, arrested Obama. Okay,
well, we know that the military command structure has been purged over the last several years, in fact, going all the way back to George W. Bush, that the military high command has been purged of anybody who might question an order to march him or herself and their troops into the jaws of death over in Russia. So at this point, I'd be willing to look at a military coup as a possible option, because most of the rank-and-file military I know are strict constitutionalists. And,
Right.
it might actually come out better. Could be worse, but at least it would be different.
I don't think it would be that terrible at all. I mean, it's when you consider that the state of the United States today, I mean, it's like in INFOWARS, we're occupied by globalist forces.
And we're occupied by Israel.
Well, I guess you might be able to say by Israel too, though I think Israel is just a small factor. I don't really think
I disagree. I think Israel is one of the major cornerstones of this push for a global government. They're already talking about how when the New World Order is brought about, the capital of the world will be in Jerusalem.
Who has said that?
It's been in the Israeli media. They even have architectural drawings of the building that they're going to build.
Is that because they think the end times are coming or something, and Jerusalem would be the capital? Is that a...
No, it's just because Israel wants to be ruler of the world.
I mean, they can't really be serious. I mean, if they wouldn't get a chance. I mean,
they are. I mean, look how many people are serious about a global government, and they're supporting it because they think it gives them a chance to park their butt on that golden throne of imperial earth. But we know that the New World Order is going to be a big fight. Where's the capital of world government going to be? And Brussels wants it there. The U.S. wants it inside the U.S. But Israel's openly talking about that when the one world government is brought about, that they think the capital of the planet should be in Jerusalem.
Well, I'll say this to the New World Order. You're not going to get your way. We, the American people, and the Russians too, will take you down. We will take you down one way or the other.
The Russians and the Chinese are very much opposed to this idea of surrendering their sovereignty to a one-world government. I mean, did you listen to Obama's last speech to the UN? He came on out and said, we have to surrender our sovereignty and join the New World Order. They're crazy, all of these people. Anyway, listen, Mark, I got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're going to take a couple of phone calls, and then I want to get on to what's going on over in Charlotte because I'm beginning to smell a big, fat USDA choice rat is going on down there. So, Mateus in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Regarding Angry Hillary, I used to be addicted to alcohol and cigarettes a long time ago, and if I would indulge in the addiction and then sober up the next day, that's how I would act. Just like angry Hillary for no reason, just kind of. So I think she's addicted for too long to power, to money, to assassination, to bloodlust, to power lust, her drugs. I think that's what's going on.
Well, now, let me back up here. Let me back up here a little bit. Let me back up here a little bit. Any kind of drug or intoxicant tends to give you more of what's already inside you. And I'll give you a good example. Claire and I enjoy a little alcohol every once in a while, and Claire tends to get depressed, and I go exactly the opposite way. The more I drink, the worse the jokes get. So I don't think that that's really an absolute, but you're absolutely right. She's addicted to money. She's addicted to power. And those kind of addicts, when they don't get what they want, yes, they react violently.
Yeah, right. And if I could please go into self-driving cars, I thought about your feedback. You said that it's probably going to be like a flash in the pan, that the people are not really going to want it. And I agree with you, but I think they're going to force it down our throats the same way that they did the fluorescent mercury light bulbs and the vaccines. They're just going to force it. And if I could just please just quickly go through my list of
well, hang on before you go any further. The fluorescent mercury-loaded bulbs are already fading away in favor of the LED bulbs.
True.
Okay. All right.
I definitely hope you're right that the self-driving cars are not going to take over. Can I go through my list here, and then you can just cut me off when you get bored, or just
real quick because we're almost out of time.
Okay. So the cars are hackable. They can decide to kill you if it's going to save some other people. There's no pride of ownership. There's no self-expression. There's no personalization. All the industries, retail industries associated with auto detailing and personalization are gone. 100 million human-controlled vehicles represents the balance of power in the hands of the public. we can use those. It represents our freedom of movement. We can protest government with that car. Our next generation is going to never know how to drive. The Egyptian ritual of binding the feet of the Pharaoh Queen reminds me of nobody knowing how to drive. The loss of jobs, like forget about mechanic jobs. You're not going to fix your own car.
Well, we're already at that part.
Fix it.
We're already there. Cars are not designed to be repaired by their owners anymore in order to stimulate the repair industry. As far as people not knowing how to drive, I understand that may seem like a real loss, but how many of you out there know how to drive a horse-drawn wagon at this point? I mean, I did when I was a kid on the farm.
Police are going to pull you over. You're going to pull yourself over.
Okay, Mateus, we're out of time. Going to have to let you go. Got to take a break for our top-of-the-hour station identification. Back with more phone calls after these words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones real quick. Ray in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike.
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes, I'm just, this seems like same time, it's like, when Germany was, World War I, when, the bankers decided the war for Germany, and then, then the rise of, Hitler, and Hitler got the Jews out, not because they were Jewish, because they were bankers, and what they've done to the society.
Well, he went further than that. He shut down the private central bank imposed on Germany by the Treaty of Versailles, and he set up a state bank and a value-based currency. And at that point, all the private central bankers on earth started to denounce Germany. They tried to organize a global boycott to shut him down because by having a state bank and a value-based currency, the German economy just took off. It was called the German miracle. And the last thing the private central bankers wanted was the rest of the world looking at what was going on in Germany and say, we want that system here. It works much better for the people.
So he was actually after the bankers, which happened to be Jewish.
Well, yes, they did happen to be Jewish. They were look at banks today and look at the Federal Reserve. It is dominated by this one group. And the idea, it was the bankers. He wasn't targeting Jews per se. He was targeting the bankers, the private central bankers.
So, in other words, the bankers could do the same thing here, and what they're doing here, they start wars. They can run. And plus the Jewish influence with the pornography and the stupid movies they have.
Okay, well now you're starting to wander a little too far afield here. The issue is private central banks are a Ponzi scheme. They only work as long as there is more borrowing going on to allow the creation of more money, part of which is siphoned off to pay the interest on the old money. And the way it works is when the private central bank is set up, they'll lure the people into debt until it reaches a point where the people can't borrow anymore because they're trapped servicing their existing debt. So at that point, according to the Keynesian economists, the government starts borrowing on behalf of the people, and without their permission, I might add, until you reach a position where the government can't go any deeper into debt, which is where we are right now in the United States. And it's at that point the private central bankers will kick up a major war because that forces the government and the people to borrow more money. The bankers make money off of both sides. They loan money to both sides to buy weapons. They loan more money to both sides after the war is over, to rebuild. And when that little three-step scam is all over, ordinary people like you and I, we have what we had before, except the graveyards are a lot bigger, and we're back on the debt slave hook to the bankers for another 100 years. And they keep repeating this scam, and it is time for it to stop.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right.
Nice day.
Thank you very much. We're going to switch to Dan in Washington. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for taking the call. That last caller kind of leads into my question. So, okay, they took out Germany and Hitler and Japan. So I guess my question to you is how would you describe the Cold War? Because were we ever really enemies? You know, if we helped.
No, we weren't. No, we weren't. No, we weren't. In the aftermath, first of all, Japan was just a convenient stepping stone. The real war was always against Germany and their public bank and their economic system, because the reality is nations that are not enslaved to private central banks are very successful. Nations that are enslaved to private central banks cannot compete with them economically, because too much of the economic activity is being siphoned off by the bankers. So Japan, by virtue of the Axis Agreement, became Roosevelt's backdoor to war with Germany, but Germany was always the real target. And if you study the history of World War II, as soon as we were officially in it, there were very few resources devoted to the war in the Pacific, because it was all about Europe. And then after Germany surrendered, then they came on over and mopped up here. But the war was really always about Germany, because Germany, with their economic system that didn't have a private central bank, Britain couldn't compete with them, the United States couldn't compete with them, and they were this powerhouse where they were just growing economically. They were building these fantastic machines. They came up with the Volkswagen, and these other governments couldn't compete with that, and so the war was basically engineered out of that.
Well, so like, say, during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, was the Russia and the U.S., like, when you look at, like, Henry Kissinger, is he kind of like an overseer of both sides? You know, it seems like he's kind of like an agent for the international bankers.
Oh, there's no question about that. Listen, we need to take a second here to do a shout-out to our honor affiliates who are rejoining our network at this point. We're looking back at a little bit of the history of World War II and the first Cold War. Now, the reality is that at the end of World War II, as is always the case when a war ends, the American people are expecting a peace dividend. They expect defense spending to be cut and their money to be rediverted back to repairing the roads, building schools and hospitals, and a better quality of life. But the Pentagon, that military-industrial complex, did not want to surrender all that money. So they needed a new enemy. And so they said, we're going to, now Russia's going to be our new enemy. We're going to have a Cold War. We're going to get lots of money and build a bunch of weapons, which hopefully nobody will ever actually use, so it doesn't matter if they work or not. And it was just this huge, gigantic scam. And the war party went on out to Hollywood, that had made all these wonderful propaganda movies for World War II against Germany and Japan. And the war hawks said, okay, now you got to do this about Russia. And a lot of people in Hollywood said, wait a minute. We're not at war with Russia. Russia was our ally, and we're not going to go along with this. And these were the people who lost their careers in Hollywood to Joseph McCarthy and his House Committee on Un-American Activities. They literally scrubbed Hollywood of any...
24 minutes of remaining drive time.
Okay, we seem to have some kind of technical issue. All right, so that was the origin of the Cold War. It was all about maintaining a war posture to plunder the American taxpayer and spend it on the defense industry, the military-industrial complex. And Eisenhower saw it coming. That's why in his farewell address he said, you got to watch out for this. These people have acquired a huge amount of money and political pull in World War II. They're not going to give it back unless we, the people, make them give it back.
Am I still on the air?
Yes, you're still on the air.
Okay. Well, okay, then how would you describe, like, China? Like, were we secretly friends with China? I mean, why the Korean War and Vietnam War? Was that just like us and China and Russia kind of just doing what you're saying is taking out the little guys, basically? Or
the military-industrial complex has to have a war, has to have an enemy, or they go out of business. And if we go back and we look at what happened in Vietnam, I mean, anybody who was there understands the carrier planes were being sent out to bomb empty fields, and it was all about grinding up war material in order to tax the American people for the war. And the American people finally woke up to it, and they marched on Washington, D.C. And Lyndon Johnson, in his memoirs, said that the day he realized Vietnam was lost was when he looked out the Oval Office window and saw 1 million people on that mall denouncing the war. Anyway, listen, Dan, got to let you go. I want to get to Francis, then we're going to hold off on the phone calls because I've got to talk about what's going on in Charlotte. Francis in North Carolina, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha.
Aloha.
A couple of cute things. Couple of quick things for you. One, I love the Fukushima deal on the coming in back. Two, horses are very noble creatures. However, the main thing I was calling about was the young lady that inquired about the charge cars that had the microchip and all that kind of good stuff, which you gave a fairly good descriptive about regarding the financial arena about that. However, there's another thing, too, that I wonder what your thoughts are about is the aspect that it's a way of conditioning people to be more accepting of having possibly a microchip embedded in them instead of carrying it in a credit card.
Well, you know, there was a push a few years ago for people to get microchipped, and a couple of people did get microchipped, you know, to huzzah in the media. But it got a very cool reception from people who do not want to be made into early revision cyborgs. So, Francis, we're going to let you go, and we're going to hold off on the calls for a little bit. I want to talk about what's going on in Charlotte. As you know, Charlotte is in the grip of major rioting and violence over the police shooting of Keith Lamont Scott. The police are saying he was armed. The witnesses and family are saying, no, he wasn't. He was carrying a book. And apparently another protester who was shot dead by the police in the Charlotte demo has now died of his injuries in the hospital. Now the police are saying, no, they didn't shoot this guy, somebody else did. Maybe, maybe not. Going to get into that in just a little bit. So, second night of Charlotte police riots devolve into chaos, looting, and violence. And let's look at this from the point of view of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Certainly, the rioting in Charlotte gives the corporate media an excuse not to report on the U.S. bombing of the Syrian troops. It gives the corporate media an excuse not to look at the latest revelations, the latest leaks from DNC leaks, which show that the pay-for-play scandal went all the way up to the White House itself. It gives the media an excuse not to report on lingering questions of Hillary's health. But more important, next Monday is going to be that first debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and Hillary's people are just scared out of their mind about that. And they're looking at the numbers and realizing, it's just like Hillary was screaming earlier today, why am I not 50 points ahead? Now, back in the 1960s, the U.S. government dealt with growing opposition to the war in Vietnam by deliberately fanning up racial tension. Divide and conquer. We're going to trick the blacks and the whites into hating and fearing and fighting each other, so they will not unite against the real source of all the strife in our country, which is the government and the war. And they did a lot of dirty tricks like that. One of the most famous was the Black Panther coloring book, and we actually have copies of that at WhatReallyHappened.com. This was a coloring book, and it wasn't even really a good coloring book. It was more sketches than colorable outlines. And it depicted black people committing acts of violence, particularly against police. And this thing was distributed all over the United States of America, and the corporate media said, see those Black Panthers, they're coming to get you. They're terrible. They're evil. And as it turns out, the Black Panthers had nothing to do with it. Because in the 1970s, somebody leaked the FBI's files on COINTELPRO to the Congress and to the media. And it showed that the FBI had been playing all kinds of dirty tricks to control public perception regarding the wars. They were behind the Black Panther coloring book. They were behind the day the hippies took over Disneyland. And I was personally acquainted with that one because I was invited to go along by somebody who was, at that time, my best friend. And after it was all over, he revealed to me that he was an FBI informant and tried to recruit me, and that was the last day I ever talked to the insert appropriate word here. So that's how these things get done. Right now, the U.S. government needs for you to be distracted. Even worse, if they can get race riots in multiple cities across the country, it gives Obama his opportunity and justification to declare a national state of emergency suspend or delay the elections, suspend the Bill of Rights, and we know they've tried to do this before. Remember when Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman were going through that whole situation, and the corporate media was saying, if Zimmerman's acquitted, there are going to be riots on every street in America. And of course, Zimmerman was acquitted, and nothing really happened. They tried to fake visuals of a riot out in California, and I loved it because there was this picture of a guy with a brand new, from the hardware store, trash can, had never seen trash in any one day, hurling it through a store window. And he had to bring it with him because the trash cans that are set on the street are bolted into the pavement. You could actually see it in the background. So the guy, crisis actor, brought it with him through the window. The media said, oh, there's violence. And in the end, there weren't nationwide riots. Because the black people and the white people understand when they're being snookered. And I hope they will remember that lesson from the 1960s. Because violence in the streets of Charlotte or any other city works to the advantage of the government you think you are protesting. Don't be a sucker. Don't be a fool. You're being used. Now, there may be agent provocateurs. Well, it's a guarantee there are agent provocateurs. It's entirely possible that that protester wasn't shot by the police. Remember when they were doing the coup d'etat over in Kiev? They were claiming that Ukrainian troops were shooting the protesters, and it turned out that there had been snipers on the roof shooting in both directions. Get everybody all riled up. That's how they do these things. So be smarter than the government and understand this could very easily be a setup to create a crisis in the United States for political gain. And if they're going to have any impact on delaying or calling off next Monday's debate, then it's really going to get out of control over the weekend. So if you are involved with any of these protests, calm down. Because violence in the streets of America works to the government's advantage, not yours. Look at the long history of dirty tricks this government has played on the American people to turn them against each other, to keep them fighting each other, to keep them distracted. Because it looks to me like they're getting ready to do it again. Now, so far, 9 people have been injured, 1 death already, 44 arrested in the Charlotte night riots, and the corporate media is just going nuts on this stuff. This is their top story, and how they're expecting things to get worse tonight in the third night. Apparently, CNN, one of their reporters, after CNN spent the day race-baiting this thing, fanning it all up, and then one of their reporters gets taken down by a protester, and CNN is saying, oh, the police have to protect us. The police have to protect us. They're the ones in there fanning this up. And if you remember CNN's blind support for Hillary Clinton, it's another reason to suspect this is being created to help her. Now, earlier today, the mayor of Charlotte is saying there is no timetable for the release of the video of the first shooting, the one that would show whether he had a gun or not. And Mayor Jennifer Roberts is out there saying officials are considering a curfew, and the timing of the video's release depends on how the investigation progresses. Well, apparently the investigation is not going very well, because now the Charlotte police are saying they will not release the video. Now, apparently, some of the protesters or agent provocateurs are throwing rocks off the highway overpass and striking motorists. How is this going to help the race issue? When you have all this violence going on, all these black people beating up white people, how does that calm down the race issue? The answer is it doesn't. They're trying to stir this up for political gain. Please forward this segment of the show to anybody who's involved in these Charlotte riots. You're being played. You're being made suckers. You are aiding the government you claim to be protesting. Now, not too surprisingly, residents of Charlotte are now flocking to the gun stores and arming up, mostly shotguns. So the gun grabbers are saying, oh, this is terrible. They're grabbing more guns. They're buying guns. We can't have that. They're supposed to just stand there and wait for the police to protect them. Forgetting that the police caused this situation by gunning this one guy down. And now that they're saying they're not going to release the video, does make it look like there is some kind of a cover-up going on. There's no question police brutality is out of control in this country, whether it's the antidepressants they're on, the training by Israeli security services. It is out of control. The police are murdering more innocent Americans than the terrorists and mass shooters put together. We'll be right back. Hello, hi America. Welcome back to our show here, and apparently they've declared a state of emergency in effect for Charlotte. They're expecting more riots here tonight. And again, this feels like it's being fanned up, and I'm not the only one who is saying that. Somebody just sent me an article from Natural News saying that based on the buzz around the net, some event is going to occur in the next few days that will be the end of Donald Trump and the reassertion of the globalist totalitarian regime over our nation. So I'm not the only one who's been concerned about this. Over in Tulsa, police officer Betty Shelby to be charged with first-degree manslaughter. And getting on back to let's talk about the economy for a while. It's not good. Now, as you know, Wells Fargo is dealing with this huge scandal where they were creating millions of unauthorized accounts for their customers in order to churn fees, get overdraft charges, whatever. And it was a huge, huge scandal. It was a huge fraud. They fired 5,300 Wells Fargo employees, low-level employees. The executive who was in charge of this operation has now retired with a golden parachute of something like $140 million. The CEO, John Stump, is refusing to resign. Was called before Congress where they called him gutless because none of the senior management of Wells Fargo has been held to account for any of this. And they knew they were doing wrong. It's not like there was a bookkeeping error somehow where, oh my goodness, we've cheated our people, we have to make good. They knew what they were doing. And according to a story that's coming out of Zero Hedge, apparently Wells Fargo has gone on the warpath, firing anybody they think may have exposed the bank's illegal practices to authorities. Now, we used to have laws in this country that protected whistleblowers. But with so many whistleblowers blowing the whistle on the government itself, they made those laws go away because, by golly, we're going to slap down people who report that we're doing bad things. Now, Janet Yellen has finally come on out and said there will be no interest rate change until the end of the year. And Yellen did this to benefit Hillary Clinton because a rate increase before the election and the subsequent drop on the stock market would favor Donald Trump. And Yellen is now having to dodge accusations that the Federal Reserve is playing politics. And that's on top of the comments that the Federal Reserve is above the president. Remember when Donald Trump was talking about the evils of the Federal Reserve and Hillary Clinton comes on out and said, you're not allowed to talk about the Federal Reserve. No president or presidential candidate can talk about the Federal Reserve. They are gods incarnate. Now, Gallup has come out with some statistics saying that if small businesses keep dying off at the current rate, we're going to lose the whole middle class. Now, from the point of view of a tyrannical government, that's a good thing, because opposition to oligarchy always arises out of the middle class. The French Revolution came out of the middle class. The American Revolution came out of the middle class. The Soviet Union survived for as long as it did because it designed a system where there was no middle class ever. It was designed out from the beginning, and that's why the Soviet Union persisted for as long as they did. Now, right now, U.S. freight has dropped to the worst level since 2010. They're describing it as an excess of capacity, meaning they got a lot of ships sitting empty. And because of competition, shipping rates are being driven down. We're going to see more Hanjin-style bankruptcies. Meanwhile, over in Europe, Deutsche Bank's problems are starting to drag the whole European economic system down. And even with talk of a possible taxpayer bailout for Deutsche Bank, it's not going to be enough, especially with that $14 billion fine against Deutsche Bank, which Deutsche Bank is saying, we're not going to pay it. And what they're really saying is they can't pay it. They literally don't have it. So there's your life under private central banks here. Now, Deutsche Bank is not on my list to get a Christmas card this year, because when Germany demanded their gold back from the New York Federal Reserve, Deutsche Bank intervened and said, you don't need to see your gold. We trust the New York Fed. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the global economy, and the indications are not good. Over in Italy, Montepaschi Rescue is on the rocks. Regulators are now expecting that the bank will ask Italy for a bailout. Remember what I said yesterday about why are we incentivizing failure? If the banks cannot run their business properly, let them go out of business. Make way for somebody with better sense. Of course, we understand what's going on here. It's that old 11th marble. It is impossible for an economy based on a private central bank issuing all the currencies alone at interest to perpetuate and sustain. Sooner or later, this plundering of the wealth by the private central bankers crashes the system, and that's exactly what's going on here. Down in Mexico, the Mexican peso is plunging against the dollar, which is, I guess, good news for all those illegal immigrants who are sending U.S. dollars back home. And right now, the U.S. federal debt is expanding at the fastest rate since the 2008 crisis. They cannot get it under control, or maybe they just don't want to. Obama's probably thinking, another couple of months I'm out of office anyway. I'm going to borrow like crazy, and not my problem to have to deal with. Story coming out of the Telegraph in Great Britain. The United Nations fears the third leg of the global financial crisis. And they're talking about epic debt defaults. And they're actually starting to use the phrase, a debt jubilee. Now, in the modern context, that jubilee is only going to be for the banks and the corporations, not for ordinary people. Because once they have you on that debt hook, they're never going to let you go. But even the UN is saying there are alarm bells flashing. The question is whether they can hold it together until after the U.S. election or not. Because if it implodes before the election, Trump will be the next president. Now, Joe Biden is over there in Kiev telling Ukraine they need to have economic and political reforms, or the European Union is going to drop the Russia sanctions. Because at least 5 countries in the European Union want to drop the sanctions. It has harmed them a lot more than it harmed Russia. And they want out. They're tired of being penalized by U.S. foreign policy blunders, which is what it really amounts to. China is getting ready to announce their gold reserve amount end of this month. And the talk over a new gold-backed yuan is ratcheting up. And of course, the possibility of a gold-backed yuan and a gold-backed ruble would be the death blow against that U.S. paper dollar, which is only backed with your future slave labor. Story out of Global Research up in Canada. It's time to acknowledge that the economic center of the world is shifting to the east. China is reemerging as a world economic power, matched by the decline in the United States. And for a very simple reason. China manufactures products. They've got something to sell, and that's what you need in order to have a healthy economy. The U.S. financial system got lazy off of Bretton Woods. The money was just coming on in because everybody was forced to use the U.S. dollar. And we have seen, over the last 30 years, the decline of American manufacturing. We can't even produce good weapons anymore. And nobody wants our GMO agriculture. The economic center of the world is shifting to the east. And yes, in terms of economies, China and Russia are going to be it. And the only thing that's going to stop that is for the U.S. to just haul off and nuke Russia and China. It almost reminds me of a skit I saw on the original Saturday Night Live. And it involved a bunch of cavemen. And Steve Martin was the smart caveman, coming up with all the good ideas. And the chief of the cavemen was not very happy with that. So in the middle of the night, he clubs the Steve Martin character to death and then stands up and says, "No, me, smartest in tribe." Well, that's what the U.S. government is trying to do here. They can't compete with these other economic machines, so they're just going to blow them up. And then they can say, we're the biggest economy on earth because we're the only ones still standing. That was a big part of the U.S. economic success after World War II. We were the only nation whose industrial base hadn't been bombed into rubble. And coupled together with the effects of Bretton Woods amounting to an imperial tax on the rest of the planet, that's what fueled the boom of the 50s. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Peter from Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I'm just looking at the news media on Charlotte and all the Black Caucus congressmen and congresswomen and all these people and all their Southern poverty law people and all. And I am so sick and tired, Mike, of the lawlessness. And like you had something on yesterday where a guy was saying, "I hate white people, I hate you all, blah 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 blah." And they're this Reginald Denny attitude where they just beat up anybody. It doesn't matter. They're allowed to get away with it.
Yes.
Like during the riots in L.A.
Yes.
When they burnt down 3,000 Korean businesses because they were Korean, and the federal government
it was the same thing all over again. It was the same thing all over again. You know, the big feel sorry for me spin from the black community in South Central Los Angeles was it was an economically deprived area. That's why we're poor and we're oppressed. And then all of a sudden these Koreans started moving in and starting businesses and proving that yes, they could be successful, and they were doing very well. And that's why when those riots broke out, the first thing to be targeted were those Korean businesses, so the black population could go back to feeling sorry for themselves and saying that you know it was only whitey and economic oppression that was keeping them poor, and it's that same mechanism again. And it's being intentionally fanned up. It's being intentionally fanned up. Right now, the U.S. government desperately needs American fighting American, or we're going to unite together and say it's time to pink slip the federal government.
Well, they neglected, the federal government back then, refused to call the targeting and burning of 3,000 Korean businesses. They refused to call that a hate crime. And we're all in Charlotte right now, and all these many Reginald Denny situations going on where they're just taking innocent people, non-blacks. I'm sure there are other people, Asians and whites and Mexicans, but mostly targeted whites. Why not? If I were there, I would be carrying, and I would not allow that to happen to me or my family, I can tell you that.
Well, a lot of the businesses in Charlotte send out mass emails to their employees saying, stay home, we're not opening today, because it has become a war zone down there. And again, looking at the corporate media, and you're right, all of these political opportunists are down there, Jesse Jackson's down there, and they're all pounding this for all that it's worth. This feels like it's being intentionally fanned up. And I'm very, very concerned that they're going to stage race riots in other cities across America in order to justify a national emergency.
I think this is the martial law moment that we've all feared.
Yes.
It didn't seem to work with all the fake bombings in New York, and so they can always incite the completely incitable black community. They're completely willing to loot and beat and steal for any circumstance, and it makes me sick.
Well, I have a message to all the members of the black community who are in Charlotte or in any other city in the United States. Again, go back to COINTELPRO. and go back and look at how the FBI fanned up race hatred, if not outright riots. And remember that a lot of the black community organizers were FBI informants. And so right now, the one message we need to get on out there is that anybody who is trying to incite to violence or escalate the situation, you have to ask yourself, is this guy really working for the U.S. government? Is it another FBI informant or agent provocateur?
Mike, you remember Jesse Jackson Jr.?
Yes.
Al Sharpton, all FBI informants.
Yes.
All of them. So anyways, it just makes me sick that we non-blacks have to bear the brunt of their hate and rage. Would have done nothing to them. Drives me nuts. This is a black officer that shot him.
Yeah.
It's
not a race issue. It's a police brutality issue, but it's being fanned up as a race issue to serve someone's political agenda.
Well, when they're beating and looting, it's a race issue.
No, it's a crime issue.
Well, they're picking their victims. But at any rate, that's it for me, Mike. Thank you.
All right, thanks. We're going to switch over to Will in California. Aloha, Will. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mainly just want to reiterate what the last caller was saying, and obviously in Europe you have the migrants, right? They're being used to cause division. Here it's, the social engineering is targeted to incite racial division, right? So I think you pretty much covered what I was going to ask. So I don't have any other questions, with the last caller there. So. But yeah, long-time listener, enjoy your show a lot, so thanks a lot for having me on, Mike.
All right, thank you very much for the kind words. We're going to switch over to Ralph in New York. Aloha, Ralph. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I would like to ask you a question. Have you heard rumors that the ruler of Dubai is thinking about buying Puerto Rico based on the bankruptcy? Have you heard that rumor?
Well, I know they're in the second day of an island-wide blackout, but my understanding was that there was a fire at the power plant they can't put out.
Yeah, and do you think all the Puerto Rican migrants are leaving the island going in the southern states of the United States? Do you think that's another version of Syrians, more or less the same way as Puerto Ricans also?
Well, we know Puerto Ricans for a very, very long time have wanted to come to America. Whether it's being amplified by the power blackout, we don't really know. But the whole world is being driven into chaos, and you need to step back and say, why? Whose interest does it serve? And obviously it serves Barack Obama. It serves Hillary, distractions in the media from what's really going on. It's certainly in line with George Soros' stated goal of blurring all humanity into a single lump in order to bring about his one world government.
Wow, so what will the future of the island of Puerto Rico is going to be in a Donald Trump administration would be like? What is your thesis on this?
I have not really heard Trump make any specific mention of Puerto Rico just yet, so I don't have an answer for you on that one.
Wow, very cool. I'm watching a press conference right now, but the Nation of Islam is declaring a boycott of all white-owned businesses in North Carolina. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
They're definitely trying to fan something up here. I'm very worried about this weekend. Now Minister
Louis Farrakhan right now is going to make a press conference declaring this, and where all these shootings is going on in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and North Miami, and Minnesota. And what's going to be a solution? Are we going back to the 1960s again of the great Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, H. Brown, and Fred Hampton days again? Wow, are those days making a comeback again?
It's hard to say. I mean, they are replaying a lot of these tactics again from the 1960s. It's good that our government believes in recycling, but the fact that they really have not been able to evolve and adapt to the new communication dynamic, I think, is one of the reasons why it may all fall apart on them.
Wow.
Okay?
Amazing.
All right, well, listen, I'm going to let you go here. Thank you very much for the phone call, Ralph, talking about the economy here. Very interesting story over at Brass Check TV, and they had a video. A few years ago, Bill Clinton, being interviewed after his term in office, he was asked if he'd made any mistakes, and he actually came on out and said unregulated derivatives were a bad idea. A few days later, his handler's gone on out there and said, we're going to clarify his comment, and unregulated derivatives are a good thing, really. And Bill Clinton just misspoke, and he had a brain fade, which runs in the family, and so forth and so on. Another story coming out of Investment Watch blog, and we've talked about this before. In the United States of America, more and more young women are becoming sugar babies to pay off their student loan debt. That's a very polite way of saying that because of those student loan bills and the inability to actually find a job with that degree, they're having to sell themselves to some rich patron. Now, is that how you want your children to grow up? Go to college and then wind up being somebody's sex toy? I remember when the economy started coming apart back in 2008. We actually had a member of Congress saying, well, you women ought to think about the sex business. It pays really, really well. The government was literally encouraging women to become prostitutes, even though it is still illegal in pretty much everywhere in the country. Go on out, sell yourself. That'll be a good thing. All right, I'm going to take a phone call. Jesse in Ohio. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing fine.
Hey, Mike, I was out here walking through town, and I was just minding my own business about 15 minutes ago. I had to call and tell you about this. I need my safe space here.
Okay.
I happened to look over and see it was blue and white pastel terror, Mike. In somebody's driveway, can you believe they had the audacity to scrawl the Hillary H in sidewalk chalk, Mike, on their driveway? I believe I have diabetes and I probably need counseling.
Well, you know, I mean, Hillary does have a bunch of useful idiots who are still supporting her, and a big part of her inertia is that she ran her campaign as a personality cult. And the people who are still supporting her, they absolutely cannot admit to themselves they backed a criminal candidate, because then they see it as having to admit they were wrong. And Hillary's supporters are fanatical. They'll never admit she was wrong. They'll never admit that they were wrong. I mean, a big part of Hillary's support are from these militant radical feminists who would vote the Manson girls into Congress just because they're women. Anyway, listen, Jesse, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and let's talk a little bit about immigration, because it is causing as much chaos in Europe as it is here in the United States of America. They're trying to create a situation of global chaos so that we will all say, oh, please, global government, come and save us from all the evil, insert target group here. Now, during his speech to the United Nations, Obama thanked Germany's Merkel for her open door policy. He talked about the need for countries to collaborate more to take care of those fleeing violent wars, which the U.S. has started. Even more alarming, this is a story being reported out of Investment Watch blog. Hillary, in one of her recent speeches, is implying that we need to get rid of the Bill of Rights and to deal with the possibility of terrorists coming into this country as the refugees and illegal immigrants. Now, securing the border seems like a good way to fix that, but basically Hillary is out there saying that, you know, these people have a right to come into our country, and when terrorists come in with them, then they're going to take away your guns. That's her reasoning and thinking, and on that one alone, I think we could have her committed. Now, the one group of illegal refugees, who are not on board with Hillary Clinton are the Haitians. Now, as we reported earlier, the president of the Haitian Senate gave an interview in which he said that when the Clinton Foundation was ripping off Haiti, collecting all that money on their behalf and not actually sending much of it down there, and most of what went down there was to buy up choice pieces of real estate for development. And he kept all the information. The Haitians have been out there protesting Hillary Clinton because of what the Clinton Foundation did to their country. And so now all of a sudden, the INS is now starting to deport Haitians. Get them out of here. Anybody with an anti-Hillary sign, oh, they shouldn't be here, we're going to start deporting them. They're targeting them for their political views. Now, over in Sweden, the number of no-go zones is increasing because the police are losing control over the violence that has been imported into Sweden as part of this whole refugee immigrant program, New World Order, globalist, blur everyone together agenda. And this idea of blending everybody together to destroy their regional, historical, cultural identity is illustrated by this bizarre story that came out of Russia today, where black British students are saying they're being psychologically damaged by the white curriculum. That there's too much focus on British history and European history. Well, I'm sorry, but you are standing in Europe. If you want to study African history, you should go to Africa. We'll be right back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're talking about the immigration, refugee, illegal immigrant crisis, which is all over Europe, all over here in the United States. And the governor of Texas, who's already in trouble over this voter ID defiance on his part, and he's right, by the way. The Texas governor is threatening to exit the federal refugee program, saying empathy must be balanced with security. And he's absolutely right about that. If you want to solve the refugee crisis, stop the U.S. wars of aggression. Now, this controversy over voter ID is really heating up. The shills are all over there saying it's racist, it's oppressive. No, it isn't. If you're a legal American citizen, it is easy to get an ID. Nobody has ever been able to document a case where a legal American citizen can't get an ID. It's absurd. They want the voter ID laws gone so that they have another vector to steal the election with, and they're fighting tooth and nail. It is not racist to demand an ID to vote. The law is only legal citizens may vote, and they may only vote one time. That's it. Nobody says it's racist when you have to show an ID to buy alcohol or tobacco. Nobody says it's oppression when you have to show an ID when you're driving your car. The people who are on social services have IDs. Legal American citizens do not have a problem obtaining identification. Only the illegals do, and that's the issue. Hillary is counting on the illegal immigrants and massive election fraud to win in November. And that means Hillary operatives being able to go from polling place to polling place using this surplus of voter registrations left over from motor voter, and they go into this precinct and say, I'm John Cooper, and I vote. And then I'm going to go to the next precinct over, I'm Phil Johnson, and going to vote there. And then go over to the next one and say, I'm Andy Fletcher, and I'm going to vote here. And it goes on and on and on. That's the only reason they're trying to overturn the voter ID laws. They have never documented a case where a legal American citizen is unable to get an ID. Even if you don't have a driver's license, states issue state IDs. It's just not there. All right, let's grab a phone call. Mary in New Jersey. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, I have two little things and one big thing. I wanted to say the one that called about the secure credit card.
Yes.
Since I never had my bank card hacked into, ever. I mean, I would have to replace it eventually because it got crunched up or lost or something.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, I got a secure one about January, February, almost every 4 to 6 weeks, 2 times in a row. I had my credit card hacked into, or it's actually like a bank card and a credit card. So I don't know if they're that secure, actually, because I do stuff online, but this was like really ridiculous. I mean, things I'd never even heard of. I usually go through PayPal and stuff. That's one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing is Obama. When I heard him say some of that speech at the UN,
mm-hmm.
I started thinking, and he was saying there are less, I've accomplished less poor people. I'm thinking, yeah, he's killing them off all over the world. He's making us so poor, he's like basically killing us all. And that's what I wanted to say about that. But also, there was something about bankers and Israel kind of, I used to think you were kind of, years ago when I was 18, I'm in my 60s. And I remember I read, I educated myself on Israel and let my people go. I read a bunch of books. So I felt like they're being attacked. Why is everybody against them? And then I saw some online videos about the history, and some of these were going back maybe to 1948. They were old videos, and how they went in and really just attacked, killed, or threw out people in a day. He just came into these villages and threw everybody out, 50,000 people at once. And then they told their own people coming in, I mean, they told Jews coming and settling that the land was empty or they had obtained it legally. So I never knew this. I had no idea. And
one of the slogans that Israel was using was a land without a people for a people without a land, and that's been one of the big arguments all along, was this idea that Palestine was just sitting there empty, ready for the nation of Israel, and it's an absolute fraud. I mean, Palestine has been around for a long time. In fact, some of our listeners have been sending me these coins from Palestine, which I'm showing on BAM User TV, that show there was a Palestine. And let's see, what are some of the years? 1941, 1927, and 1935, and it goes on back. There was a Palestine there. There's no question there was.
Well, I knew that England called it Palestine, but I didn't know. But also, I think these Zionists, they played their own people. I mean, they egged on.
Well, it's just like how the U.S. government plays the American people.
Hitler. Yes.
With Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas, governments lie to their own people. It's not unique to the United States of America.
Exactly, but it just kind of clicked that they sacrificed their own people. They egged Hitler on. I saw 2 old videos where Hitler was discussing how the president was instigating him to try to do something. This was in the 30s.
Well, there were. I mean, Hitler wanted to give the Jews Madagascar as a homeland. I mean, they had a deal in the works there, and the Zionist leadership said, no, we need lots and lots of dead bodies so we can get Palestine. I need to take a second here. To do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. We're taking phone calls, and we're talking about the real history of Israel, which basically came on in and stole Palestine for themselves. And here's the irony of it. Okay, because the vast majority of the Jewish people who are living in Palestine right now are not the descendants of the biblical Hebrews or the biblical Israelis. They're mostly descendants from Central Asian Khazars who converted to Judaism in about 800 A.D. And when Khazaria fell, they migrated north into Russia and westward into Europe, and that's where they all come from. And then they have this thing in their head about, our homeland is Israel. No, it isn't. It never was. And the proof of that is look at their skin. They don't even look like they're from the Middle East. They're all pale, white-skinned people because they're Europeans.
can I say something else?
Yeah, real quick.
I read about that, and I never believed it because I'm into archaeology, and, you know, I just read all this stuff, and my father had all these history books, and then I did see another thing about that, and I was interested because my mother's family kind of comes from that area, but they became fanatically Eastern Orthodox. But there was I know these people. I saw the whole video how that happened, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's so much history that people are keeping from us.
That's exactly right. Every ruler in history tries to control what their population knows and doesn't know in order to maintain control. And that dynamic has changed because of the Internet. In fact, you could retell all of human history as a constant battle between rulers trying to control what their people know and technological breakthroughs which changed the fundamental flow of information through society. Gutenberg and movable type printing, the telegraph, newspapers, radio, eventually TV, and now, of course, the Internet.
But they're playing us all for fools. All the wars, like I saw your bankers' war.
Yep.
And the Muslims who they're provoking. I mean, they're playing the whole world for fools. They're playing us all. All of this is artificial. It's all made up.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Every war is started with lies, fraud, and deception.
And here we get all passionate over it, and it's ridiculous. It's just made up, the whole thing. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to let you go. We got a bunch of callers on the line here. John in Missouri, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I was wondering why we have radioactive waste coming out of a fertilizer plant in Florida.
Well, part of that has to do with the way the fertilizer is produced, because one of the least expensive forms of fertilizer is basically mined minerals. And unfortunately, when you're mining mineral fertilizer, you're getting a lot of stuff in there that you don't want to have, such as polonium-210. And it's very inexpensive fertilizer, and yes, the stuff will accumulate. Back when this whole issue about cigarettes and cancer was starting to surface, in a very roundabout way, the cigarette companies were actually correct. It wasn't the tobacco causing the cancer, but the tobacco plants were being grown in this cheap mined mineral fertilizer, and because of a process called bioaccumulation, these tobacco plants were taking up the radioactive particles of polonium-210. They were embedded in the leaves. People would smoke them, and the polonium would take up residence in their lungs and eventually lead to cancer. And so, yeah, that's why there's radioactive waste from this fertilizer plant.
They're not bringing something in and trying to hide it?
I don't know for a fact that they are not, but there is a legitimate vector for fertilizer to be radioactive if it's using mined mineral components.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thank you. We're going to switch over to Pam in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael.
Aloha.
Thank you for taking my call. One of my fondest memories of Hawaii is driving down the Pali Highway and smelling the fields of ripe pineapple. Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Well, not much pineapple by the Pali Highway anymore, but certainly up in the center of the island by the Dole Plantation, it's definitely there.
It was wonderful. What a great memory I have of that. Well, anyway, I would like to correct you on people having difficulty getting an ID. I recently went to get one and had all of my paperwork in order, and when it came to the part where you go over and you get your photograph taken and you sign your name in the little box, well, part of my signature has become without prejudice, UCC 1-308, and they would not accept that. They wanted me to re-sign it.
Well, okay, but I think
without qualifying it.
We've got apples and oranges.
They told me it was a law.
Hang on, Pam. We're talking apples and oranges here. You clearly have a way to get an ID. The difficulty that you had was going on in there with something, that space is for your name, and unless you have a legal document that you've legally changed your name, That's all that's supposed to go in there. The citizen, they have people who wear pasta strainers on their head because they're members of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. They do try and make it very, very easy because they want everybody to have an ID. And the fact that you want to sign something additional onto your name, that doesn't mean that IDs are not available to legal citizens. It means that you're gumming up the works.
That means I'm taking control of my signature. And they tried to tell me it was a law, but they could not quote me the law. I asked them for it, and the best the woman could do is to get her office manager, and the best he could do was to give me a 1-800 number.
Okay, Pam, let me ask you a question. Did you legally change your name to match that signature?
No.
There you are. That space is for your name only. Okay, Pam, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Ken in Georgia. Aloha, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Ken in Georgia here. Great show. I was calling up about the debate Monday, and I've had some thoughts on it. I just wanted to share them with you if I could.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking this could be a pull-up in that she might show up there and she might have a signal she gives her. They might even have it where they could call in a bomb threat like, kids used to do back when they get out of school for the day.
Anything's possible.
I could see that happening.
Well, I'm sure that Hillary's handlers are going to be watching her very, very closely. And if it looks like she's going to have a medical episode, yeah, there could be a convenient power failure in the studio. The video feed from the debates could get cut before it gets to the network. They could call in a bomb threat. Who knows what's going to happen? Right now,
maybe a lot shooter.
Maybe, but right now, my understanding is that this debate is not actually going to be a debate. It's going to be a forum where the moderators, who are all Hillary supporters, I might add, are going to ask the candidates specific questions and allow them to answer. But Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are not going to debate each other directly. And a big part of that has to do with the fact that Hillary is great at memorizing stuff and reading teleprompters and listening to the little radio in her ear, but she cannot think extemporaneously the way that Donald Trump can.
Hey, are they going to be in the same room together?
Yeah, they're going to be on the same stage.
Okay. I was thinking this might sound nuts to you, but I could see them kind of getting Trump, because I know how they can play him, and get him to say something about Bill Clinton, maybe about his extramarital affairs. And then Hillary can act all outraged, get off, walk over and slap him in the face, say, I'm not going to debate you, maybe even be wearing a ring with poison in it. And then
well, that's getting a little paranoid out there, but we do know they're going to try and provoke Donald Trump. They're going to get him to try and lose his temper on TV, because that always comes across very bad. Remember the very first GOP debate where Megyn Kelly went in there with her question about women's rights, and they literally had a plan to drag Donald Trump off that stage and throw him out of that debate right there in order to destroy his rise to the nomination. And, of course, Donald Trump evaded. He told a joke. The audience laughed with him. And I remember Megyn Kelly's face. She was furious. How dare you refuse to roll over and beg for mercy in the face of us almighty female, commentators. And so they're going to be trying that on Monday, and I'm sure Donald Trump is aware they're going to be trying that and maintain his cool. But again, he's facing an uphill battle because all of these moderators are all on Hillary's side.
Big time uphill battle. Hey, Mike, Monday, I know this sounds crazy, goofy, but it would be maybe cool. After the debate, if Donald Trump clearly wins the debate, maybe you could start your show off with the music, or sometime in the show you could play the old Gray Mare theme.
I might just be tempted to do that.
I got to say this one last thing, just in case, and heaven pray it doesn't happen. If somehow Hillary goes in there and actually, Trump blows it, and she comes out a big victor, and I hope that doesn't happen, but I'd like to hear your rendition of Casey at the Bat.
I think Donald Trump is fully prepared for the debate, and he understands it's a hostile moderators. He understands they're going to try and provoke him, he dodged that bullet before, and I think he's going to do it again. The real issue is going to be if it looks for a moment like Hillary is having any kind of problem standing up there, if she has to leave the stage unexpectedly again, because she's had to do that before in some of the earlier debates where she had to leave the stage. And by the way, that is absolutely forbidden in the rules of the debate. You're not allowed to leave and go get advice from people behind or get another shot of medication or whatever. But the more and more I look at this morning's video where Hillary is now shouting at her supporters.
I haven't seen this.
It's on the front page of WhatReallyHappened.com. It's either she's having a change in medication that's affecting her, or all of a sudden she's beginning to understand she could lose this thing even with all the election fraud out there. So time will solve this mystery. And Ken, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials.
How do I get your email?
It's right at the top. It says email What Really Happened, or email WRH at the top of WhatReallyHappened.com. We'll be right back. Hello, America. Welcome back to our show here. Story coming out of 12 on socialengine.com. Apparently a leaked email is showing federal immigration bosses are running an overtime campaign to swear in as many new citizens as they can before the November election. Now the story came on out. We've been talking about how Donald Trump is drawing sellout crowds to his rallies. Nobody shows up for Hillary Clinton. It's even worse than that. Mike Pence got a bigger crowd in the pouring rain than Hillary gets in good weather, and he's only the vice presidential candidate. The reality before our eyes is Donald Trump is going to win in a landslide, and Hillary's trying to figure out how she can steal it and convince you that it wasn't stolen. Good luck on that one. There are still dozens of lawsuits from the primary season. It cost Debbie Wasserman Schultz her job. Now, Geraldo Rivera, who spends a lot of time on the Fox News channel, has apparently lost his own talk radio show in New York at WABC. I might be lured away for the right offer. Okay, let's talk about some other things going on back in the war zones. I've skipped on down the talking points because I wanted to get to that Charlotte issue. The U.S. has now landed their first B-1B Lancer bomber on the Korean Peninsula in 20 years. This is in response to North Korea ground testing a new rocket engine, which North Korea says is designed to allow them to launch geostationary satellites. South Korea is saying it's designed to attain a long-range missile. Well, here's the reality. You can send a rocket from one side of the Earth to the other with a far smaller engine than it takes to get out to geostationary orbit. That's a huge amount of energy to get out there. And again, they don't have any evidence. It's just right now the U.S. government botched their back door to war with China in the South China Sea. They've made an enemy of the Philippine government. And so that's why they're just dropping all this South China Sea nonsense, and now they're going to try and get a backdoor to war with China going through Korea. Now, speaking of the Philippines, President Rodrigo Duterte has sent a message to the European Union that he does not need their advice on how to combat drug dealing in his own country. Because apparently in the EU, they're making a big thing about the human rights of the drug dealers. We must respect their human rights. And I cannot help but wondering if the sudden European Union concern for the human rights of drug dealers is because their government, like that of the United States, is up to their necks in the illegal drug trade. I mean, that's what Obama messed up. I mean, we have President Obama who will not hesitate to send drone strikes into countries that we are not actually at war with and blow up innocent people left and right. But boy, did he get upset over the Philippines wanting to shoot drug dealers. You can't do that. I've got a piece of that action. And now the EU has chimed on in, and President Duterte is saying, it's none of your business. Which means sometime next week the U.S. government will announce that ISIS and Al-Qaeda are now in the Philippines and the bombing is going to start. Now, I'm not the only person who's observed how Obama really cratered the South China Sea issue. Sputnik News has an article saying that, Obama, in leaping to the defense of drug dealers, has botched his pivot to that region. Now, apparently, a Utah congressman is proposing a bill to literally steal more land from the Native Americans and turn them into oil drilling zones. This goes way beyond that Dakota pipeline issue. And this is the first Native American land theft in 100 years. But obviously, oil companies are much more important than ordinary people. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I'm watching Fox News, and there's a very troubling story out there. They're bringing back the zombie Osama bin Laden, and CENTCOM is now out there saying that before he was killed in Abbottabad, Osama bin Laden was setting up a global network of terror. Terror. Well, first of all, we know that whoever was killed in Abbottabad wasn't Osama bin Laden. James Corbett has got this amazing video, very entertaining, about 9/11 and conspiracy theory. The real Osama bin Laden died of Marfan syndrome in late 2001. And every Osama since then has been a fake, getting younger and younger and healthier looking. But it's telegraphing that somebody inside the U.S. government is thinking about another false flag terror attack to reinvigorate the war fever in this country. And it's going to have to be something really big, because crashing airplanes into buildings, it's passé. Been there, done that, didn't buy the T-shirt. So what are they going to do? Set off a nuclear bomb someplace? Blame it on Russia? Blame it on Iran? Blame it on Syria? And a little bit of common sense on that one. If Russia or China were to consider a nuclear strike on the United States of America, they would go all in. It wouldn't be just one. Blame Iran for it? At this point, who would believe the U.S. government? After all the other lies about Iran, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Afghanistan. But I find it very troubling that they're out there pushing this global terror network. Knowing how desperate the U.S. government is for some kind of catalyzing event or game changer. Now, over at the United Nations, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Powers, is not really impressing people very much. Recently, during the aftermath of the U.S. strike on the Syrian troops, she came across as having just been rousted out of bed and being hung over, which I guess if you were having to lie to the world the way she does, it'd be hard to stay sober. But what it all distills down to is Samantha Powers is now condemning Russia for Russia's condemnation of a U.S. war crime. This is the how dare you accuse us of a war crime. Well, you did commit it. Well, I condemn you for pointing out that we committed a war crime. So that's what's out there. All right, let's talk a little bit about computers and their ilk. Cisco is now saying that a recent flaw in their routers, which was identified as a potential security flaw, is just being caused by cosmic rays. And if you remember the early days of computers, that was actually a legitimate excuse. Stray cosmic ray could cause a bit to shift its value inside the memory of a computer. But modern computers, and we would hope routers, are shielded against that. But that's Cisco out there. Everyone is now talking about the array of things. And Argonne Labs and the Department of Homeland Security are installing 500 spying devices throughout Chicago in a pilot program, which, if successful, will be followed by cities across the United States. Now, the cameras mounted on each array of things box are going to be recording all data on vehicle and foot traffic, standing water, sky color, cloud cover, and they're claiming the photos will be deleted within tens of minutes, and if you believe that one, I have some of Saddam Hussein's nuclear weapons to sell you. Now, Oliver Stone, who was enjoying a success with his new film Snowden, has come on out and said that surveillance in the United States, especially under Barack Obama, is worse than the Stasi in East Germany. And he's absolutely right. Now, Edward Snowden is out there saying that you should not start using Google Allo, which is their new Smart Chat application. They launched it yesterday. He's saying it's dangerous. And he's saying that Google is recording every single message you ever send on that chat app, and it will automatically be made available to the police upon request. No warrant required. Got to read that end-user license agreement very, very carefully on that one. 200 million Yahoo user accounts have now been hacked. NSA can't find those people. Let's take a phone call. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, you're scaring me with Osama bin Laden. Did you hear he is back or what?
Yes, he has risen. You know, fear the walking bin Laden.
Yeah, he's probably coming to freaking kill anybody that thinks that the Snowden movie has any resemblance of truth to it.
Yeah,
which is unbelievable.
But it does concern me that they're running a trial balloon. Can they convince the American people that there's a global terror network from Osama bin Laden, that even in death he is a threat to our country? And I'm smelling panic coming out of Washington, D.C. right now.
I know. I wanted to tell you, you know how you always say if the American people found out about some of the lies, they would really look into all the other lies that our government has told us, like 9/11, Benghazi, even this email scandal. I think that point could have hit here when they let Hillary Clinton go. When they're not pressing charges on her, I think the majority of America now realizes that she's a liar, and plus with it coming out with the Snowden movie, people could be taking a double look at.
Oh, they already are. They already are. And it's not just Hillary's lies. James Comey's refusal to press charges and Loretta Lynch going along with that is revealing to the American people the entire federal government is corrupt from top to bottom. It's all been corrupted by massive amounts of drug money, and the jig is up. The secret is out, and that's why they're panicking. Because they've gotten away with all that they're doing behind this matrix-like illusion that we have a democracy and we live in a republic and the government is only interested in what's best for the American people. We all know that's a lie now.
It is. It's a big lie. I always ask every Democrat or any one of them that are still supporting Hillary Clinton, and I only actually know about two, and I know a lot of people, but I ask them what the difference is between George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton, and I'm still waiting.
Yeah, a lot of people have pointed
out for them to tell me what it is.
Yeah, because if you look at the wreckage of Hillary's career, she's caused as much damage as a neocon warlord. She's not progressive at all. She's very much, she wants to be a war president. She wants to be empress and lay waste to the world. And do you know that Hillary Clinton actually bears a resemblance to Countess Earthabat Bathory? You know, the bloody countess, the real-life forerunner of the female vampire legends? They actually look alike, especially in their facial expression.
Yeah, you never know. You never know, man. Now that I'm getting a little older, I wouldn't doubt anything. If someone said, hey, Barack Obama is freaking a Russian citizen and is here from Russia running our country, I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, I would doubt that. I mean, that's what Hillary's trying to sell people right now is that, I'm sorry, you were talking Barack Obama. Momentary slip on my part. They're trying to sell this idea that Donald Trump...
I shouldn't use that analogy.
Well, no, but it is. I mean, we are so lied to. Americans are the most lied to people on the face of the earth. And virtually everything we get off the corporate media is a lie or a deception or an exaggeration. Everything coming out of the government. In fact, I think they lie about everything. They don't dare tell the truth even once out of fear that we might learn how to tell the difference. And then the game would be over.
That's right. And I will say that I've heard it before and I believe it to be true. Ever since we let Kennedy's assassinators get away with it, those people control the world now. Well,
they control a big chunk of it, but they don't control Russia yet, and they don't control China, and that's why they're trying to gear up World War III to build the imperial Earth and a golden throne of the planet, and they all want to warm that seat with their own butts.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, let me ask you this question. What program do you use to run your radio show with, just out of curiosity? I know you use Skype, but for like your YouTube, where you transferred over to YouTube, what do you use for that?
Actually, I don't do that. That's done by one of the fans. I use BAM User to do the video feed, and then somebody else comes on in and grabs the video and just posts it on YouTube. I think it's an automated script. As far as what software runs the radio show itself, that would have to be a question that would be answered by Mike in our control room. I know there's a lot of radio show running software out there. But I've never had the need to run the show directly from my system here.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. I was just wondering. Hey, I thank you so much for all your work. And you think that Trump is going to go ahead and do a landslide for us, huh?
Well, in an honest election, he would win by a landslide. The problem is we do not have honest elections in this country. But we have to give Donald Trump such a landslide in the real vote that the election stealers are going to realize if they try and reverse that for Hillary, everybody in the country will know it. That could actually trigger a real revolution.
Yeah, I believe that a New York Times article just came out where they said that people think that Donald Trump is 10 times more honest than Hillary Clinton. Did you see that?
Well, I would agree with that. In fact, I would say Donald Trump is 1,000 times more honest than Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton has never been honest a day in her life.
I hope she loses, man.
I am working very hard for that to happen. So many things will change if we can get the narcocracy out of power in Washington, D.C.
That's right, and I loved hearing Donald Trump said he would have his Department of Justice relook at the email crap.
Well, that's another reason why Hillary is panicking. I mean, Trump is talking about Trey Gowdy as Attorney General. Oh, boy, would that cause a lot of upset. And the other thing Trump is going to have to do is remember when Bill Clinton came into office, he fired all the U.S. attorneys in all 50 states and put his own cronies in there. Trump's going to have to do the same thing because those U.S. attorneys in the states, just like Loretta Lynch, they're there to protect the narcocracy from prosecution. So we got to scrub all of those people out too.
Yeah, we need to fire that black guy. I don't know his name. The Democrat on the committee there with Gowdy and Chavez.
Vote him out.
One that always talks about. Was that?
I said vote him out. Next opportunity, vote him out. Along with Donald Trump, we have to have an anti-incumbency fever sweeping this nation. And we're already seeing it. We saw a lot of it in the primaries. A lot of incumbents have gone down to defeat. John McCain is facing serious competition. He just barely squeaked by the primaries, and he probably cheated to do that as well.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, I'll talk to you later. Keep up the good work, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Chris in Ohio. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing okay.
All right, I got a question, a little comment. I'm a black guy, and I'm supporting Trump for obvious reasons. And, of course, Hillary, the obvious choice, that would be the bad choice. And I agree with Trump on economics, immigration, and well, those are the two main things: economic, immigration, and he against the wars. I know that affects a lot of my people. Those three things.
Yes.
Part of our struggle. So my thing is though, he made a comment about he would bring back the frisk and search. That really bothered me with that because that even when they put that in place in New York, it's proven that it doesn't work, and it's a waste of time, basically. So what's your comments on him saying
Okay, would you back up a little bit because you were talking a little fast. Trump wants to bring back what?
The frisk and search. Somebody asked him a question about that. He said he would bring back the frisk and search, or search and frisk.
Well, I think Trump's agenda on that one isn't the black population, but the immigrants. I mean, we have, Hillary out there saying, yes, we know we're allowing terrorists to come into our country, and our solution is to take away the Bill of Rights and stop and frisk until we close those borders. It may be a time for extreme measures like Duterte is doing down in the Philippines. But the issue here is that Donald Trump is inheriting a nation that has just been totally screwed up by decades of narcocracy corruption, and he's going to have to fix it, and it may take some extreme measures to do that.
Yeah, I just worry will it roll over to the black population as far as that get to us and search the season again, because like I said, I try to bring people over on my side to Trump, but then
what we need to do is we need to rein in the police. We need to give them courses in non-escalation. We need to kick out all those Israeli trainers, and we need to look at this issue about how prescription antidepressants lead people to violent actions. That's a very real concern. Big Pharma has literally poisoned the minds of America and made us more violent. And because of their profit motive and our corrupt government, they're allowed to continue doing so.
One more thing. Do you believe that the training that the police have on average is too short or needs to be longer? And, that's my main thing right there. You think that training is extensive enough?
I think their training is in the wrong direction because of these Israeli security companies. They're being trained to treat the American people the way the IDF treats the Palestinians, and it's not working out very well. We need the police to be trained to keep a situation under control, not provoke, not be provoked, and get away from this shoot first and drop a plant gun afterwards attitude.
Right. And don't New York, the police department have a headquarters in Israel? Isn't that illegal if that's true? Like, how can they do that?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time a little bit more slowly so I can hear you?
Okay, yeah. I said, don't Israel have a police department? New York police department. Don't they have a headquarters based in Israel? If they do, shouldn't that be illegal?
You have to wonder why the New York Police Department would have an office in Israel, but so does the FBI. And it's all in the name of coordination. But it's another artifact of this idea that our police are being trained by Israel to treat the American people the way the IDF treats the Palestinians, and this must stop. Chris, I'm going to have to let you go. We've got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, and aloha America. Welcome back to the show. My concern about the situation in Charlotte being spread to other cities as a pretext for a declaration of national emergency is already starting to happen. We're seeing this story where a group aligned with Black Lives Matter in New Orleans has just announced they're going to tear down the Andrew Jackson Monument in the French Quarter. So they're already trying to spread this all over the country, have race riots everywhere, and a national emergency, and blah, 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 blah. All right, last phone call of the day. John in Barbados. Aloha, what's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Yes, I think I've been active in politics in the UK, and of course I've been interfering in America, as you know.
Yes.
My belief is that we should make the police personally liable for any crimes and things that they commit. I mean,
I agree.
Really, that's the only way to actually control this situation, making them personally liable so that the union cannot come to their rescues.
Well, it's not just the union. I mean, every time a police officer guns down an innocent American, there's always a lawsuit. And who pays the lawsuit? The taxpayers. And that's got to stop.
Exactly. Another observation that speech that Kerry, John Forbes Cohen, gave to the UN. What a mendacious man that is.
Yes.
He is such a liar. I just went into a fury when I listened to it. It was nonsense from beginning to end. As for these debates, there was a caller yesterday. I managed to catch the edge of it. He was asking my opinion. I don't think there will be a proper debate. The forum probably, maybe, but will Hillary stand for that hour or hour and a half? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And I think this could be the making or breaking of this campaign. But 2 years ago, Michael, I suggested that this sort of scenario that we're seeing now, this fanning up of race riots, would create the national emergency that Obama sadly needs to prevent Trump gaining the White House, because he's going to win by a landslide, is to create this national emergency and suspend the election for a period of time, which will end up being years, and probably he'll be the last president.
Well, you know, there's a middle ground there, and that is race riots all across the country, and then they blame Donald Trump for it.
I don't think so, because there are too many people now, black people, supporting Donald Trump.
Yes.
And I'm sure they would be quite vocal in their, in their opinions on.
Yeah, but the corporate media is only going to focus on the members of the black community that are supporting Hillary. You know, they have to hunt them down, but they're still out there. John, going to have to let you go. There's the music. Time to end the show today. Get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. A reminder, the Lady Claire will not be able to join us tomorrow. She's got a scheduling conflict. You are all part of the independent media. Make a point of copying off what you see on the website, here on the radio show. Share it with everybody that you know. Working together, we can shout down the corporate media with all their millions of dollars and their technology. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.